Hey folks, happy Monday and welcome to the podcast. This episode isn't an episode of the Whitfield Report, but rather this is an episode of a group podcast that I do called the American Watchmen Roundtable, which is co-hosted by my American Watchmen colleagues Joshua Johnson, Adam Hill, and Gabe Iacaboni. We actually launched this podcast last year in 2018, but it never got off the ground. So around September of this year, we kind of decided to take a hiatus and rework some things and whatnot. But we relaunched the podcast this previous Sunday, and we think it's going to work well. I streamed the podcast live on my YouTube channel, The Whitfield Report. So that's probably where we're going to do the podcast. But as far as the audio podcast goes, in the future, we will have our own podcast feed for the American Watchmen Roundtable. But in the meantime, I wanted to feature this episode of the American Watchmen Roundtable as a bonus episode of the Whitfield Report podcast, just as kind of a little teaser trailer for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed the show, and stay tuned to this feed for Thursday's audio podcast episode. Thanks, guys. Enjoy, and God bless. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the American Watchmen Roundtable. I am one of your co-hosts, Sam Whitfield, broadcasting live here in Florida. And we're doing this stream from my YouTube channel because the American Watchmen YouTube channel is unavailable right now. So without further ado, I'll allow my co-hosts to introduce themselves, starting with Adam.
Hey, this is Adam. I'm a founder and co-editor of American Watchmen.
And Gabe.
Oh, I'm Gabe, and I'm also a founder and editor of American Watchmen.
And last but not least, our good friend, Mr. Josh.
And I am also a founder and co-editor of American Watchmen.
So, folks, usually we do this podcast once a week on Sundays over on our own channel at American Watchmen. But like I said, our channel is kind of shut down, just like the federal government is tonight. So, without further ado, let's move right into that topic, shall we? What are you? I guess who wants to take the first stab at the shutdown? What are you guys' current takes on it?
I mean, I can kind of jump into this one, Honestly, I don't see this shutdown as a bad thing. I mean, I know a lot of people do, but I mean, I just love how you get to see the hypocrisy of the left in this shutdown, because when the shutdown happened during Obama, it wasn't Obama's shutdown, it was the Republican shutdown. And now, when the Democrats control the House, now it's suddenly not their shutdown, it's Trump's shutdown. That's my take on it.
Yep. I will just add, too, that I love how the Dems are also making this all about, well, Trump wants to harm children. When I played clips of Trump's speech on my own podcast, The Whitfield Report, last night, and Trump clearly says in that speech that he wants to protect children, both Hispanic and American, from the drug cartels who use children to smuggle drugs. But the left always completely just abandons that point all the time.
I guess I'll be the sole defector here, and I guess I'll kind of call it Trump shutdown still, but I think that's a good thing because I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of Republicans going to Washington and then constantly letting the Democrats walk all over them. So Trump actually taking a stand for getting the wall built and fulfilling a campaign promise is a plus in my book.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. I said last night that we need the wall 100%.
Yeah, I'll agree with Josh. I think if anything, this shows that Trump is really the only serious Republican on immigration. I mean, I think you could make the argument that Republicans made when Obama was in office about how in 2009 and 2010 Democrats never passed immigration reform, but in the 2 years that Republicans had the White House and Congress, they did absolutely nothing on the wall.
I'm sorry, but is somebody crunching a candy wrapper?
I think that was Adam, but yeah, I mean, getting back to the subject at hand, Trump really is the only. I mean, I guess now he is a politician, but I mean, really, he's really been the only figure within the past 5 years to really make immigration a serious topic. I mean, immigration. If we think back to the 2016 election, immigration wasn't even on the table as a main topic prior to Trump entering the race and causing the major, crap storm that he did in terms of perception and whatnot. And I mean crap storm in like a good way, in the sense that he shook things up in terms of the narrative. He made immigration a central focus. The fact that people are saying that he's shutting down the government over immigration, they see as unnecessary. But my question is, how much longer can we keep pushing this subject to the back of the boilerplate, so to speak? I think we're out of time, and I think Trump knows we're out of time too on this issue.
I think Trump just doesn't want to kick the can down the road anymore.
Right.
To be honest, I think it speaks at some. I think it speaks at some level to the fact that Trump doesn't trust his own party to actually, even if they give him a bill to sign. The logic of the media is, oh, it's Trump. Oh, he can't decide. Oh, his inner circle doesn't know what he's thinking. But I think that speaks more of the fact that Trump doesn't trust his own party to actually handle the issue well. Because if they kick the can down the road and they do one of the things they've talked about, which is fund everything except the Department of Homeland Security and only fund the Department of Homeland Security until February, so they then have like a month or two to negotiate it. I think it speaks to the fact that Trump doesn't trust his own party to actually get him any better of a deal, because what will happen is they'll talk about it for a couple months. Pelosi won't budge, Schumer won't budge, and McConnell will have to pass a bill, which basically is the same thing that Democrats are offering now, which gives nothing to Trump or his base.
I would add in two things. I think you're right that he can't trust his own party. Specifically because what reason would Trump have to trust Republican leadership on this issue? They've frequently chosen in the past to either cave in completely, like when Reagan decided to grant one last, quote unquote, one last amnesty, or they tend to kind of play this game where they'll leave the issue open-ended for as long as possible instead of actually acting on it, because they know they can use that to mobilize a base that doesn't agree with them on much else when it comes election time. The second thing, which I think you might find more interesting, Gabe, is if you look at the map specifically for Texas, the Cruz versus O'Rourke map. Mm-hmm. You look at the counties that O'Rourke won. I was talking about this with a friend of mine from Texas the other night, and she sent me the pictures of these maps, and I said to her, it almost looks like a map of the invasion where you can kind of see the front line sort of advancing. And I think that ties into what we said about Trump knowing we've sort of run out of time, because we can't allow, I think it was 25,000 people a week coming in across the border without it seriously impacting the demographic makeup of our country and specifically altering the way our elections play out.
Right.
So,
well, I think it's already significantly impacting the way our elections play out.
And just to clarify for the audience watching, that this in no way translates to us wanting an ethno state, because I mean that's the argument that a lot of people in the media jump to, that if you're for a wall, you're also
there's a difference between saying that ethnicity becomes the sole qualification for citizenship and saying that a native-born population shouldn't be a minority in their own country.
Well, right, I agree completely, Josh. But I mean, the left makes that mental gymnastic connection almost instantly when talking about this subject. If you're for immigration, if you're for stricter immigration policy, or rather stricter immigration enforcement, you must also be for a white ethno state or some crap like that, which is nonsense. Trump specifically said that he still wants to allow, people to immigrate to this country legally. We just can't have hordes and hordes of migrants hopping over the fence, quite literally illegally. So, Josh, one thing I did want to ask you about, in regards to Trump's speech, you said you thought I think you said the other night on Facebook that you thought the speech was a little underwhelming, or was that some?
I thought the speech was good, but I don't think that Trump, I don't think his delivery was good, because it seems like when you try and tie him down and hold him to the script, he's much better at his rallies than he was on television that night. My immediate reaction to a friend of mine was that I think this is the first time I've ever seen a speech where somebody was looking dead on in the camera and I didn't feel like they were looking at me. And the thing about it that's funny about it is that even with the flawed delivery, somehow Chuck and Nancy managed to do even worse. So even with the flawed delivery, it was clearly superior than her slurring and slushing her words around and offering no real plan beyond get rid of all your leverage for us to negotiate with you, and then we'll do what we want.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, for Trump to back down would mean he loses all leverage. He's dug into his position. For Trump to back down at this point, it won't do him any favors in terms of getting what he wants.
I will say, from the news coverage angle, it and maybe I don't know how this is for you guys and other voters, but for me, it kind of pulls at my heartstrings. Some of the federal workers. I know the other night I made a post about the FBI and I've made comments about the TSA and some of those, but I'm not referring to those types of people so much. Their lack of funding right now doesn't bother me because I don't think it's near as big a deal as the media makes it out to be. But when you see the stories about people calling the mortgage company or whatever and they're being turned down and they're selling everything, that kind of gets at me. But at the other hand, on the other hand, you have to, and people who watch this and feel that way like I do while watching the news have to understand that if we have open borders and mass migration, it's going to hurt a lot more than just 5,500 federal workers. It's going to hurt people who are already hurting year-round with or without the shutdown across the country, who do get their paychecks and still struggle to make ends meet because they can't compete in a market where legal immigrants artificially drive down wages.
Well, it's gonna partly building on that, Josh, is it's just gonna create more poverty in general, because the jobs that immigrants, whether they're legal or illegal, are gonna fill are low skilled labor where they make minimum wage or barely above it because they don't have any marketable skills. So, great, they're making $8 an hour, but $8 an hour is not going to afford the rent.
Well, not just that, but people are talking how the federal workers are out of work right now, and how negative that is. And like Josh said, I feel for some of these federal workers, no doubt, but a lot of them at the end of the day are also paper pushers and bureaucrats. That's not to say that they don't deserve a living too if they've applied for the job and worked at it. But at the same time, um,
It's kind of like this. During the Great Depression, if you were rich and the stock market collapsed, then yeah, it hurt you, but it doesn't quite hurt you like it hurt somebody who had little to no money to begin with. So if you're somebody who's a elite federal bureaucrat already, odds are you're going to be able to handle going off of work for 2 weeks much longer than somebody who struggles even when they are getting a paycheck in the middle
well,
of the country. Uh,
well, well, exactly. The other thing too is the problems that Trump is trying to address with immigration are issues that don't affect them anyway. So it's not like this affects them all that much in the long run individually.
Yeah, I mean they'll get back pay. It's almost a guarantee.
they do get back pay, and then I'm not sure for like the park workers, but I know for a fact that people who are in the IRS and more office oriented jobs, they not only get the back pay, but they'll more than likely end up having to say, well, we fell behind during these last 21 or 22 or 23 days or whatever. We
Yep.
now need to work overtime, so they'll collect some overtime pay on top of that.
Yep. Yeah. And the thing is that while I feel for federal workers, if you miss a mortgage payment, you're not gonna get evicted from your house. I mean, it takes multiple mortgage payments for that to happen. You'll be assessed a fee, but people aren't losing their housing because of this crisis or because of this shutdown in a mass way, which I think is what the media is inferring is going to happen or is happening.
They've kind of grabbed at straws the way they've pulled the way they've covered this, because at first it was that the thing Trump doing right before Christmas was like the Grinch stealing Christmas or something, was what one headline said. And then fire and change going to the other that Trump was not funding the law. They said Trump wasn't funding law enforcement because the FBI wasn't getting funded. Well, big whoop. Most people are counting on their local sheriff and police departments for their protection more than they are the FBI.
Right.
Well, and I saw some ridiculous mental gymnastic from some columnist, I think it was in the New York Times, or maybe it was HuffPo. They wrote something about how, Trump is shutting down the FBI just so that, Mueller won't be able to nab him or something like that. There are some people who are trying to tie this back to the ridiculous, Trump Russia scandal, and in air quotes. So.
Here's a real interesting question. I wonder how many of these, because a lot of these big media corporations are owned by the same small handful of companies or families. I wonder how their coverage of it. They're always so anti-shutdown. Then it makes you wonder: is that because the companies that own these media outlets might be losing out on federal subsidies during these shutdowns?
Yeah, it could be that, but at the same time, I mean, they've also got to be loving this because it gives them the excuse to write whatever they want and create a big media frenzy, which, I mean, they do anyway on a daily basis, but, I mean, now they're really going to town on it, so.
Well, it gives them a chance just to virtue signal. I mean that's in essence is what this shutdown boils down to is just virtue signaling for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a good estimation.
Here's a good question, Gabe. How long do you think we can go on this one?
You mean on the shutdown one?
Huh? What?
You mean on the shutdown?
Yeah, on the shutdown.
Yeah.
I think what'll eventually happen is that it'll reach a critical mass where basically both parties throw up their hands and eventually come to some sort of compromise. But I think it will take. I think it would be both parties actually just revolting against their leadership. So I think it would be Republicans revolting against Trump, but I think it would also be Democrats revolting against Nancy Pelosi, and their excuse would just be, well, we had to open the government. So I mean, I don't see leadership doing anything in it, and that you guys know that Mitch McConnell, the background of the shutdown is McConnell tried to send Trump a bill and Trump vetoed it. I think McConnell knows that this is going to drag on for another month, and then eventually leadership is just going to get thrown overboard. And that's why he's not doing anything, because he knows that's what's going to happen. So why should he act like Trump and Pelosi and act like they know what the heck they're doing when basically the rank and file are going to get so ticked off they're going to just give leadership a middle finger? I think that's what's going to happen, but I don't think it's going to happen for at least another few weeks.
I saw the other day they had a headline on the Hill, and I was actually impressed with McConnell for once in my life. And I was impressed because he had apparently blocked several bills to try and reopen the government. Mm-hmm. And I'm impressed to see him following the White House's direction on that. But
well, I think he's also in his own way. I think he's amping up that pressure for there to be a bunch of lawmakers who basically just get so frustrated that they come to a compromise. Because the thing is, if McConnell lets those bills come through and they go to Trump, Trump looks bad if he vetoes them. But the pressure to actually have some sort of compromise pop up lessens because fewer departments are closed. So, the damage is lessened. So I think in his own way, because I've read stories where McConnell has been criticized for not doing anything, I think McConnell knows that something's going to happen regardless, but it won't happen sooner if he actually moves on all these small little bills.
I actually have breaking news for you guys, or rather breaking news by Instagram. Dan Crenshaw from Texas just posted to his Instagram and to his Twitter. He says, "I cannot in good conscience get paid while federal employees' financial futures hang in balance because of this partial government shutdown." That's another thing I wanted to bring up is Congress is still getting paid while this is going on, so it's not a complete shutdown. But
yeah,
anyway,
so is the military. All except for the Coast Guard, all the other military is still getting paid regularly.
He says,
so
he says,
essential.
So he says, "I've asked this chief administration officer to withhold my pay until we have come to an agreement to adequately fund border security." So, I mean, that just got sent to me. I guess the post is 2 hours old, but still, it's, relatively breaking news. I think, that's the other thing that a lot of people are missing out is Congress is still getting paid and whatnot. So this isn't a complete shutdown in that sense.
No, I mean it's a partial shutdown.
I guarantee you they would figure out a way to open the government again if the military wasn't getting paid. I guarantee you that they would very quickly find something because the soldiers wouldn't put up with that for very long. But
yeah.
They also, they also have found workarounds for things like ensuring that food stamp benefits go out as well. So, I mean, I honestly think at this point, even though it's been a partial shutdown for 3 weeks, a lot of it is just the perception that the government is shut down. In reality, a lot of the primary governmental programs, big or small, they haven't been affected on a nationwide level. I mean, it's true, like government contractors aren't getting their reimbursements and grants are not being processed for science and new loans for agriculture are not getting processed. But on a systemic level nationwide, a lot of the major programs are still running.
funnily enough, the IRS is not considered essential in terms of pay. They did have a plan, but their contingency plan only lasted for about 2 weeks. So they've now had to begin rethinking what they're going to do going forward from here. The consensus that I'm seeing is they might have IRS workers come in without pay. For now, they will continue to accept. Like we can already start filing tax returns. It's just that you're not going to be getting your refund anytime soon.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys know that I work at a nonprofit. That is one of those things that some of our clients rely on those tax returns because they're low income, so they're going to get refunds on their earned income tax credit. A lot of them have already filed, so they're just waiting on the refund.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, this partial shutdown really has not. It's more the perception of the damage that it's creating than it actually has created a lot of damage. I mean, I was reading an article the other day that said, "Are you missing your government yet?" And I don't think a lot of people are actually missing their government yet.
I don't think people are. It as long as the vital parts of it, like we just discussed, are still functioning, people will be fine. It's when, for example, the military and the police stop getting paid, or when your food stamps or whatever get cut off, that you start seeing Greek levels of people throwing fire bottles on the street. But we're not close to that yet.
Right, and I think that's why neither side has moved in terms of negotiations. I mean, like I said before, this shutdown can essentially be. I mean, regardless of your position on it, this shutdown is basically entirely virtue signaling. Because Democrats used to be for the wall before Trump was elected, and Republicans used to support border security until Trump got elected. And then they were just like, we're not going to worry about it. We're going to focus on other stuff. So, I mean, at its core, until I think those big impacts of a government shutdown, whether it be food stamps or Medicare reimbursements not going out to doctors, until we see something like that, I really don't see an impetus for either side to back down because they lose more than they gain.
A lot of the media coverage is focused on how the shutdown is costing a lot of money. But I think that sort of explains why the media obsesses and focuses over it so much. It's not just the anti-Republican bias that's always been there that they think they can pin it on us like always. But it also, I think, has to do, as we've kind of discussed on other topics, the fact that so many media jobs are centered around New York and Washington, D.C. now, where the affluent live. It's resulted in, if they lose money or if it affects them in their little neighborhood, they make it out as though it's hurting everybody nationally, even though people in the middle of the country that they usually don't even think about might not even notice. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes a complete sense. Well,
it affects them on a daily basis. It doesn't affect normal people in the middle of the country, but because it affects them and they all live, the entire media complex is centered around these few huge cities now. They make it out like it's a national problem affecting everybody when it really isn't.
Well, they're oblivious to the fact that people live elsewhere in the country. They think everyone lives in giant metropolitan cities. Maybe not like consciously, but subconsciously, that's what they seem to think, it seems. So,
well, I think it definitely slants the coverage. But I mean, again, in terms of the impact, it really just hasn't impacted a lot of the country. I mean, think about it this way. Like Josh said, if a lot of media jobs, and they are focused, say, on the East Coast and Pacific Coast, they're going to be the ones who are going to see all these federal workers who are furloughed. But do you think somebody in like Montana is going to see any of these workers or feel any kind of impact from it? No. So, I mean, I guess my question to you guys would be, what would it take to end this shutdown?
Democrats giving us $5 billion to build the wall.
You mean 5 billion?
So yeah, you know what I mean. However much it takes, give me my money for the wall. But I'd be interested in seeing what happens if the president just went ahead and declared the national. I know there are a lot of Republicans that'd be mad about it on the precedent deal, but I wonder how the Democrats would. Well, first off, they'd try and have I believe it's the Ninth Circuit Court that always screws us. I think
they stick it in court.
Yeah, they just take us to court. But I wonder how the congressional leadership would immediately react if they would keep the government shut down for as long as the court proceedings take place, or what their plan would be from then. But
well, I mean, I think from a political side, it's a winner. I think it's a winner for Republicans, because it might be a winner for Trump too, because remember, one of Trump's talking points is how there are Obama judges and there like Bush judges and conservative and liberal judges. I think if that happened, if he did declare an emergency and it got struck down in court, it would just fit his narrative of the courts are against me and against America, and it would give Trump something to rail about, and he could then point to 2020 and go, if you get me reelected, I'll appoint more judges that will actually back me up when I do stuff on immigration.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if I were one of Trump's advisors, that would be the message I would be selling him really, really hard. And it would be the message I would also be conveying to all these Republican congressmen and senators who have sort of given the cold shoulder to this idea of an emergency.
Here's a question. Here's a maybe side question, but do you buy, Gabe? Do you buy that it's just precedent that keeps some of these Republicans against the idea of a national emergency, like Mitt Romney or Ben Sasse, or do you think, as I sometimes kind of wonder, that they really do, two different reasons they might oppose it besides that. One, they are ideologically committed to open borders, like, say, Mitt Romney, because they directly profit off of it, and they believe that people and labor and capital should be free to move all over the world. Or, in a more cynical sense, like perhaps, I don't really want to blame McConnell after just praising him, but I'll use him as the example. Or do you think that some top Republicans are against it because they're afraid of losing one of those issues that the out-of-touch donor class that runs the party can use to try and motivate people during elections?
I would certainly say it's that second option for me, Josh. I think that a lot of Republicans, although they may be ideologically with Trump, I think a lot of them are maybe afraid or scared of pissing off their special interest donor.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the second one, because as long as you don't do anything on it, you don't anger the donor class, but you also keep the issue alive during election season, so you can get your base to turn out, especially your blue collar base. I don't know how long that strategy is going to work, though, because I don't think that strategy worked in 2018. I think they lost more than they gained from that strategy. So I don't think doubling down on it is going to work. They're going to have to pick one or the other eventually, because you can't keep this going in perpetuity.
They have to pick one another because, drumroll please, Josh's realignment theory.
No, I agree, and I think we saw it significantly in the midterms. Is that the paradigm, I think the perception of the parties, that Republicans are for the rich and Democrats are for the poor. Republicans are the party of the rich. I think that in reality it shifted. Democrats are now the party of the rich. I mean, just look at the zip codes that they won last year compared to the zip codes the Republicans won.
Speaking as somebody from a long line of Dixiecrats who joined the Republican Party, I would argue that we've sort of been slowly moving towards this since at the earliest, the 1964, and at the latest in the 1990s, because for a long time, it seems like I'll put it this way. When I was growing up, my dad when I was a very little kid, so he wasn't describing politics to me in a complex way, but I'd be sitting there on the floor. The family would be watching Fox News. Bill O'Reilly was what we watched all the time. And I would be playing with my toys while my parents watched that. And then sometimes I might look up and say, "What are Democrats and Republicans, Mommy and Daddy?" And it would be explained to me. He always explained it to me that the Republican Party, and remember, this was like during when George Bush was president still. He would explain it to me that the Republican Party is the party for working people, and the Democrats are a party of snobby, snooty elitists who look down on us. And that was, and he also named a few people that we knew around here that we didn't like as examples. But and it drove that point home for me. But for a while, though, I think that just speaks to the fact that we've slowly been moving towards this where there are almost two parties. There's the leadership, and then there's the actual membership and voting base of the party. Yeah. And they've been out of sync for a while now. And 2016 was just sort of the Titanic starts to hit the iceberg, and now it's slowly begun sinking kind of point.
Well, and here's a point that a friend brought up to me the other night, Josh, and I figured that this might be particularly interesting to you. It almost seems as if the government, in terms of how things are run, isn't so much run by our elected leaders now, so much that we elect during elections, but that my consensus is that we've kind of been managed by bureaucrats that work behind desks now.
It's the managerial class, and that exists in both the public and private sector. It's these people that go and they get all their credentials, their little ducks in a row. They check those boxes off, and regardless of whether or not they have the skill or the experience, because they've sort of got their social credit card or whatever you want to call it. They've got the social criteria. They get into these positions like Mark Zuckerberg or whoever, and then they have the power to control your life. Whether that be as a government bureaucrat or as some Silicon Valley titan who increasingly says, "Oh, well, you have social views that we don't like, so we're not going to allow you to earn money on Patreon, or we're going to kick you off of Facebook and Twitter or whatever."
Yep, so and in fact,
it's a class that spreads across government and private sector.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Josh, because right as you were saying that about Silicon Valley, I was just typing with our live chat just to make sure that everyone got notifications that this live stream was in fact live, because some alternative media channels that I subscribe to have not been getting notifications. I just want to remind everyone watching that if you're not getting notifications, make sure that the bell is checked on YouTube as well. That way you'll actually be able to see this. And for those of you just joining, we're talking about the shutdown as a broader topic. So anyway, back to what you were saying there, Josh.
I kind of finished my point, so I'll just let you guys kind of bounce off from there.
So, certainly what I guess now would be a good time to move into what we would like to see resulting from this shutdown. Certainly for me, I would like to see the border wall become a reality. And I think it was Josh that said we would both like the Dems to give us $5 million to build the thing and make the wall.
$5 billion.
$5 billion. But it's not going to. I don't know if it's going to happen.
I would like to see it at least be started, and I don't like saying this because I plan on voting for Trump again in 2020. But I think that was his key campaign promise. That's what he really kind of became known for, and I think that's why, as Gabe mentioned, he's drawn his line in the sand because he can't trust the mainline Republican Party leadership to actually do anything on this. Because I think for him, and Ann Coulter hammers at him, and she's one of the very few people Trump follows on Twitter. And she hammers almost daily that she puts out her little tweet saying, miles of wall built today, 0, next update tomorrow. And she'd been pushing and pushing and pushing leading up to this. And I think for Trump, it really came down to, if I don't at least do something to get started on this wall, it could very seriously jeopardize my chances at winning again in 2020.
Well, I mean, Trump has other things that he has to deal with too. The wall is certainly a big thing. The other thing is, not to change topics too much, but I've discussed this on other episodes of the Whitfield Report and other podcasts I've been on. The other thing that is not helping Trump is some of these MAGA celebrities or these super MAGA-tard celebrities who just go out and do stupid stuff at rallies in the name of Trump. That's certainly not helping us with all of the publicity stunts. So, but that's another topic for another time, maybe. So,
I would say if we're going to get anything out of this, I mean, my hope is, I mean, I don't know if a wall is effective or not, but I feel like this entire saga is representative of the fact that America doesn't want to have a serious conversation about this, and that we're so serious about not having a serious conversation about this that we're willing to have a government shutdown and let the major parties just virtue signal this issue to death. America needs to have a serious conversation, A, about what it means to be an American, B, what it means to be a melting pot, and whether, as Josh, you've said before, whether Americans are comfortable with the idea of having not necessarily a certain race be a minority in the country, which is what it gets boiled down to, which is ridiculous in my mind, but whether America is comfortable having a majority of people be in this country who are not native-born Americans. And we, like I said, we are so not serious about discussing this conversation that we have serious conversations about a government shutdown. That tells you how misguided the priorities are.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I think, excuse me, I've struggled with phlegm in my throat for a while now, the last 2 weeks. But I think that what kind of ties into your point, Gabe, if I can find out how I want to say this, we're not really, it doesn't seem like we're one country anymore. And there have been articles written about this ad nauseum. I know I kind of constantly hint at it when I talk about, my birthplace in Iowa and our congressman in the district over there and the way the media treats him. But somebody, or even the gal we were talking about before we went on air, who I had that person I know from California. We've had more intense political discussions and debates than I usually have with anyone. And I've seriously thought several times, is this person on another planet? And I don't think I'm the only one who gets that, impression being from the Midwest, talking to somebody from California or New York. The culture and the viewpoints and the way that, as you mentioned, we think about what it means to be an American has become so radically different depending on what region of the country you're in, that it doesn't feel like we are really one country anymore, if that makes any sense.
No, it does.
So,
yeah, I mean, essentially, it boils down to, my hope is that this makes Americans wake up and have a serious conversation about it and be able to talk about it without just saying that you're a blanket racist or you don't like diversity or don't want to embrace it. I mean, those are the simple answers that unfortunately breed the kind of division that we have in this country. There's nothing wrong with saying that you want to celebrate your ethnic history and that you believe that a majority of Americans should be native-born Americans. You're not saying kick every non-native-born American out of the country, but you are fundamentally expressing an idea that you believe in. It's not racist. It's not majority white. It's not majority black, but it's a valid opinion to have But when somebody calls you a racist for it, it basically shuts you down and ends the conversation and breeds the division that ultimately leads to something like we're experiencing now. And the political discourse now is just basically, if you're for the wall, you're a racist, and if you are against the wall, you're against border security and stopping illegal aliens from killing people. It's an incredibly oversimplified argument that just goes nowhere.
The next episode of the American Watchmen podcast. Are we near having our own version of the caning in the halls of Congress?
I think
I'm not the only one who gets that reference, because that's like my favorite little episode out of American history. I'm amazed they haven't made a movie out of it yet, because I just love reading about it. It seems like it would be great for a movie if they could find some way to drag it out.
Citizen Kane goes to Washington?
No, I mean the caning of Charles Sumner.
Oh.
He was a abolitionist senator. I forget which state he's from. But he basically gave a speech that he was warned even by other abolitionists not to give, where he accused, I forget the name of the particular senator, but he accused a Southern senator of basically liking slavery so he could sleep with the slaves. And another Southern senator by the name of Preston Brooks was the cousin of the guy that he accused of in that speech. And he felt, per his role as a Southern gentleman, he felt like his family's honor had been besmirched. And he consulted with a few of his other Southern senators, and the conclusion they made was that this guy, his language isn't becoming of a gentleman, so he's not worthy of having a gentleman's 10 pistols at 10 paces duel. You just have the right to go up to him and give him hell. And so Preston Brooks walks into the Senate one day, has a big, you've seen him in the movies, the old 19th century kind of heavy walking. And the Senate desks back then were bolted to the ground. So if somebody came at you, you weren't going to be able to just jump up out of your chair and slide away. And so Preston Brooks walked up to him and just clubbed him over the head with it and went nuts and just kept beating him with his cane until the thing finally snapped in half, while another Southern senator drew his gun on the Senate floor and stood there making sure nobody intervened. And ultimately, Sumner's laying there a bloodied mess on the floor. I think he leaves his duties from the Senate for like 4 years, and that's one of the pivotal moments leading up to the Civil War because of this kind of cultural divide between those two different parts of the country, and that sort of exemplified it.
Hey Josh, I'm in a Discord right now, and I've shared the link to this, and someone in the Discord just said that you sound a lot like Andrew Klavan. So.
I'm not sure if I should be insulted by that or not.
Yeah, I was just typing. I'm not sure if Josh. Just you're kind of the. I don't even know how to classify you politically. You're your own person.
I'm an old line paleo-conservative Catholic reactionary nationalist. I don't know how you can sum that up, but. I like Huey Long and Richard Nixon. We'll put it that way. But
yep. So to Canna in the Discord, there we go. That's the best way to describe Josh. So, but yeah, I actually think that we should bring. I think we should bring caning back, and I think we should bring duels back too. Since we're talking about favorite episodes of American history, I love the duel between Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. I think if we brought duels back, a lot of problems would be solved. So
that's just what came to mind to me when Gabe was discussing the fact that we've come to the point of having the shutdown, because I'm not saying we're necessarily on the road to another civil war, but it is. We might have to dedicate another episode just to this topic, but the culture has become so radically different. As Gabe and I talked earlier, where I'm from in Council Bluffs, if you go there, even though it's not in the South, we have Confederate flags literally everywhere. And so when Steve King has one on his desk, and some ignorant reporter from New York says, why does the senator from Iowa have a Confederate flag on his desk? It must mean he's a white supremacist racist. It has nothing to do with that. You just have no clue what the local culture is around here. And that's the kind of thing that leads to where you have these kind of such intense divisions where you get things like the caning that happened. Because you have these progressive liberals in these big cities in New York and California who think that the entire country needs to be exactly like them, and they refuse to just allow places in the South or in the middle of the country, like in my home state, Iowa, or where I live now in Nebraska. They refuse to allow us to just live our lives the way we want to here in peace. They try and come and force their ways on everybody. And they have no understanding for life around here the way it is. For a lot of people, and myself included, that flag doesn't stand for anything but states' rights. So it's just kind of it's a joke. It's a joke, and that's where you get to this almost, men are from Venus and women are from Mars kind of deal, where you have people in different regions of the country who don't feel like they're both citizens in the same country.
Well, and I think it makes a mockery of every presidential candidate running around saying they're going to be president for every American. Fundamentally, you can't be anymore because the cultures are so drastically different. I mean, can you imagine Kamala Harris representing, southeastern Iowa where Steve King is from? Because I can't.
No, I agree with you completely.
So, I mean, I think at a fundamental level, the shutdown is a symptom. It's not a cause, but at a fundamental level, until America, in whatever form they deem it necessary, addresses this issue, it's just going to get worse, and it's going to manifest itself in ways like this shutdown. And immigration is probably the hottest button, is probably the most hot button topic as a symptom of this. But the root cause is just that America, to do a shameless plug here, I think America has basically become ungovernable. I think there are too many differences in this country that make it impossible to govern it as a single leader.
Well, I've kind of discussed this, I think, on this show before. And it's where you get to the point in a country's history where, there are some ideas that can coexist with one another, but then there are other ideas which are philosophically, they're coming from very base, very ground level kind of cornerstone worldviews from which you view everything else. If those two things aren't aligned, if you have these two worldviews that are fundamentally opposed to one another, those are the kind of ideas where two of them are not going to be able to exist peacefully in a single space. And that's where you get these periods in history where they both kind of walk into the room and everybody knows that only one of them is going to get to stay in that room. And the other one's either going to die or it's going to go somewhere else. It's going to be forced out. So that's sort of, I don't like using such blunt language there, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also love this notion too that, can't we all just get along? And I wish we could get back to the days where things were civil. And I mean, yeah, I certainly hope we can get back to the days of having civil disagreement and civil discussion. But the fact of the matter is, nowhere in our nation's history have we had kumbaya ever. This kind of nostalgic look that we have is just kind of beyond me, because we never have to begin with, ever.
I think Gabe summed it up really good in our group chat earlier, and I'm going to paraphrase him, if not outright, just kind of take a different phrase or a different point with the same meaning. But if you and I can't agree whether or not Bruce Jenner is either a man or there's only one gender. It doesn't matter that he went and he got his gender changed. He's still a man.
He's still a man.
If you and I can't agree on something like that, then there's very slim chance that we can agree. That's a very base thing to disagree about. It's like saying, oh, well, I think the sky is black and you think the sky is blue. Only one of us can be right. And it's not going to, you can't make a compromise on something like that.
Well. Can I ask you guys something real quick? You guys are gonna laugh, but do you guys think that we went to the? Do you guys think that we actually put a man on the moon?
Yes.
I mean, I guess I have no reason to doubt it, so I'll go ahead with it right now anyway.
Okay, because I've had moon landing conspiracy theorists invade my channel chat, not tonight, but in the past they have. So I just wanted to make sure that we could all still agree on that, because even in 2019 we can't even seem to agree on
Well, Sam, you, me, and Gabe might be able to agree on that. But I just saw a news story the other day where the Russian space agency actually came out and said they were going to do a study to determine whether or not we actually landed on the moon. So we know they disagree with us.
Oh, please. Oh God, no, Josh. What did you just do? You just gave the moon landing freaks more ammunition to use against me. So
Well, no,
oh.
of course they're going to question that they lost. But I just thought I'd bring that up. I thought that was hilarious when I saw that a few days ago. But,
I'll send you guys clips in the American Watchmen Facebook chat so you guys know what I'm talking about. It's been a hell of a couple weeks, but yeah. I mean, but like I said, at this point we can't even agree that the moon landing happened or that the Earth is actually round. What? Because flat earthers have become a thing again. Yeah.
I'll just, this is my closing thought on this before we move on or we start wrapping things up. But I've mentioned my friends from New York a few times on here, and I've mentioned how they, like my friend from California, seem like people from Mars to me. But they are adamant, and I'll mention we can't really talk politics because that there's just too much disagreement there, and things quickly go downhill. So we usually just talk about menswear. That's what because they own a shop that sells that classic vintage British menswear over there, and that's what we usually talk about. But I follow them on Instagram, and so I see their stories, which sometimes inevitably include political things and or cultural kind of things. And despite the fact that they're both adamant atheists and they'll mock me for, being a Catholic and believing in the Eucharist and all that, they earlier this evening, right before we went on the air on the podcast, they were gushing over their tarot card readings. So I mean, if the organized, 2,000-year-old religion that millions of people have believed in, and which there is credible evidence for, is apparently a hoax according to them. But some little magical tarot cards that are open to interpretation are totally legit.
Yeah, well, there you have it. So, I mean, that's what the world has pretty much come to at this point. So,
all right. So, final thoughts, circling us all the way around. Josh, do you think we'll get a border wall?
Within the first term?
Well, I mean, do you think the shutdown will end with us getting a border wall?
I want to say I hope that it ends with us getting the funding for it, or at least getting it started. I want to hope that we get it. I don't know if we actually will, because the way things are going, I'm kind of just, I don't really know what to expect, because we're sort of in uncharted territory, it seems like you said, where it might go to the point where people buck leadership. But I don't really see how it ends right now, period. I would hope that they give us the money to get started on it, or that we can reach some sort of agreement where we can get the wall. But the thing is, for me anyway, the only kind of compromise that I can kind of see some wanting to do is, well, we'll allow so many illegal aliens to stay here, we'll grant so many work visas or whatever in exchange for the wall money. Well, then that sort of negates the whole point of the wall if you're just letting everybody who's here already stay here. So to me, that would be an unacceptable compromise. I want us to get them out, the people that are here illegally, and get the money for the wall. I don't see how we're going to get that agreement, though. So I guess that's my closing thought on it.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Josh. I mean, at this point, I'm kind of jaded of politics just in general. I mean, it doesn't really seem like we're going to get a wall at this point. I hope we do. I think Trump is going to try his damnedest, but I think there's just I hope he stands strong and holds his gun, but I don't. I think the other Republicans will unfortunately cave under the pressure like they always do. So
Yeah. I'll say I think I like I said before, I think it'll well, I don't think we'll get the funding for the wall. I think there'll be some sort of compromise that pops up from membership and leadership goes along with it, but I don't think fundamentally it will address the issues that are dividing this country, and I think it'll get worse before it gets better.
yeah,
To kind of bring it back to my realignment theory, it does seem like the real new divide in politics isn't so much, and we saw this a lot with Tucker Carlson, who I'm hoping we can discuss next week maybe, but it's not really so much left versus right anymore as it is whether you're somebody who is open or closed, or whether you're a nationalist or a globalist at this point. Because do you, like Gabe said, the fundamental questions are, what does it mean to be an American? Or, since this is happening kind of all over the Western world, what does it mean to be a citizen of a nation state? Or so that to me, I think that's become the new defining question of our time, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon, like Gabe says.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I completely agree with what you guys said. I really don't have anything else to add on to that. I think you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head with that last statement. So
we're at that thank you Cleveland good night stage.
yeah, or I guess thank you well, who is playing in the Super Bowl anyway at this point? I don't even know. So
Well, we're not at the Super Bowl yet, Sam.
do we even know?
For once, I wasn't the one who was ignorant of these things.
After Dallas lost yesterday, and I'm not even a Dallas fan, but they're like my second favorite team. I just tuned out. So yeah.
Well, there's the Pats and there's the Patriots and the Chiefs, and then there's the Rams and the Saints.
So good night from New Orleans, I guess.
There you go.
So anyway, folks, thank you for tuning in. I don't know. We may have this on my channel from now on because we're getting some more viewers over here. But if you would like, I'll create a short URL to the American Watchmen YouTube channel so that we can get some more subscribers over there. And as always, we'll have the podcast of this up on Apple Podcasts. I'm going to start doing that this year again. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. And thanks to all the people who tune in live to watch us. From all of us here at American Watchmen, good night, God bless, and God save this great nation. Hey there, folks. If you've made it this far to the end of the podcast, I'd like to thank you very much for listening to the show. You are the ones that make it possible for me to make an income from podcasting, and I greatly appreciate that just by listening to our show. You are helping us gain ad revenue. However, if you would really like to help support the show, I encourage you to please donate to the podcast and become a supporter of the show. You can head over to anchor.fm/Whitfield Report and click the support this podcast button and choose the amount that suits you to support the show. Or you can click the link in the show notes and it will directly take you to that page. If you can support the podcast, I really, really appreciate that. Anything that you can do to help out is greatly appreciated. Even if you can't afford to help financially support the podcast, I encourage you to please go on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, and please leave this podcast a positive 5-star review. That really helps us out here at the Whitfield Report. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next episode.